It was 10:31 when my phone buzzed. Emergency alert. Do not enter underground structures such as basements. Stay above ground until the all clear. My husband looked up from his phone and stared at me. Did you just get a... Yeah. That's creepy, I said, glancing at the stairs. Our kid had fallen asleep for the night about an hour ago. What? What do you think is going on? I don't know, he replied. Could it be like a gas leak? Radon or something? We'd had a radon pump on our basement since we moved here. Maybe there was some weird influx of it, or something. I ran up the stairs to check on our 5-year-old daughter as Luke flicked on the TV. Grace was sleeping peacefully, her blanket wrapped around her. I made sure she was breathing, comfortable, totally fine before heading back downstairs. When I did, Luke was glued to the TV, which said the same thing. Black screen, pixelated white letters, blocky colors jittering along the top and bottom of the screen. Emergency alert. Do not enter underground structures. Maybe we should get out of here, I said. But it's late and Grace has school tomorrow. Yeah, so? We'll miss school. We can go to my mom's. Luke crossed his arms and stared at the TV. He then flicked to CNN and other news channels, but whatever was happening here must have been local, because it was just the same political drivel re-airing from earlier in the day. There was not a blip of emergency alert anywhere except the local news channel. I pulled out my phone and did some Google searches. Nothing came up, so I shot off a text to Lacey, the mum of one of Grace's friends, who lived in the next development over. We'd only lived here since the school year started, so it's not like I had a whole weekend of people to ask. She didn't respond. I think we should go, I said, grabbing a duffel bag out of a closet. What about work? Don't you work remotely on Mondays anyway? Yeah, but... I walked over to our basement door. The chain was latched. I hurried into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and pulled out some postal tape. What are you doing? If it's radon or something, I don't want that stuff all in our house, I said, crouching along the bottom and taping the crack under the door. I'd think they'd evacuate us, if that were the case. I looked up at him as I yanked another long piece of tape off the roll. Okay, so what do you think it is? He shrugged. When I taped all the cracks, I brought the duffel bag upstairs, filled it with a few random outfits for me and Grace, along with my laptop and a few of her favorite dolls. Then I grabbed the cooler and loaded our leftover pasta and yogurts into it. Within 10 minutes, I was ready to go out the door. I'll pack up the car. Can you grab Grace? I asked. Luke went upstairs. I walked down the driveway, weighed down with bags. It was a chilly, clear night. Stars twinkled high above me. The street was exceedingly quiet. The tall, scraggy pines of the surrounding pine barrens stretching up to the sky. I heard the echo of a dog barking somewhere. If everyone got the alert, wouldn't there be more people deciding to leave? I glanced at the house across the street. It was completely dark, except for the light above a garage that flicked on when I came out of the house. I opened the back hatch and threw our stuff in. Luke came out after, carrying Grace, wrapped in blankets. She blinked sleepily. I strapped her in. Luke grabbed some stuff, and then we were pulling out of the driveway, on the road to my mom's house an hour away. She fell back asleep, I told Luke, watching her face flick into view with the light of the passing street lamps. Good. My phone buzzed. I reached for it. Emergency alert. Your phone's GPS indicates you are leaving city limits. We do not recommend evacuating. Please return home and stay above ground. What the fuck? I whispered. What? Luke asked. There's another alert. It's saying it knows we're leaving, is tracking our GPS, and is telling us to stay. Luke glanced at my phone. Seriously? Yeah. That data is supposed to be private, he said. Isn't it? I would think so. Unless, I don't know, maybe there's some emergency protocols that allow the FBI to access it or something. We fell into uncomfortable silence. Luke clicked on the turn signal, switched lanes. You don't want me to turn around, right? He asked quietly. I glanced down at my phone. No, I don't. The highway was empty, not a single car in sight. That made me uneasy. Surely other people would be evacuating. Unless they were all actually obeying the second message, but who even trusts the government these days? I did another Google search. No results popped up. I refreshed over and over again. Wouldn't something be on the internet by now? We were 5 miles out of town now. I should be relieved, but I wasn't. I leaned against the window, the cold glass pressed against my forehead. The pine trees flashed by, skinny and tilted, then gave way to a charred, barren patch of forest. Both sides of the highway were burnt to the ground. I'd read somewhere that some pine cones only opened in extreme temperatures, like from a wildfire. Fires and regrowth were part of the cycle here, part of the ecosystem, in flux between death and rebirth like a phoenix. My phone buzzed. My heart dropped. But it wasn't an alert. It was a text from Lacey. Only 2 words. What alert? My fingers raced across the screen. Didn't you get an emergency alert saying to stay above ground? No. Lacey didn't get an alert, I said. Luke paused. What? What if the alerts were only sent to our phone? I asked, my voice shaking. I glanced back at Grace, still peacefully asleep, head lolling softly with each bump of a car. Luke shook his head. That's crazy. No one can send messages like that, just for government or whatever. What if it's a trap? My voice shook harder. What if the only safe place was our basement? That's just your OCD talking, he said softly, empathetically. We're doing the right thing. There's something weird in town, like a gas leak, and we got out. That's obviously the safest thing to do. I stared out at the charred pines. There were a few that hadn't burnt up, standing tall and stilted in the darkness. I stared out at them, wondering why they were spared. One of them moved. The car screeched to a stop. My body lurched forward, the seatbelt locked, keeping my head from hitting the dash. Sorry, that deer just darted. His voice died in his throat. We both stared at the lower legs of something illuminated in the headlights. Thin and spindly, but definitely not a deer's. They ended in twisted toes, not hooves, and extended several feet up into the darkness. Silhouetted against the starry sky, beyond the reach of our headlights, I could see something tall and spindly, skeletal, crisscrossing lines of bones or sticks, or something else entirely. As I stared at it, as it stared at me, a wave of dizziness washed through me. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, weight pressed down on my head, an immense pressure bearing down on me. Thwack! Something hit the side of the car with incredible force. The entire car rocked on its wheels. I screamed. Thwack! A mess of lines, bones, sticks outside of my window, empty air between them, the stars and the pines rippling strangely behind it. Luke stomped down on the accelerator. The car shot forward. We swerved around the thing, then past the burnt section of forest and continued down the dark, twisting highway. My phone buzzed. Emergency alert. All clear. Please return home immediately. We got to my mum's house around midnight. A squat, brick ranch on a residential road. I glanced warily at the pines behind her house, stretching up to the sky before picking up Grace and carrying her inside. Mum was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for us, her fingers wrapped against the mug in her hand. The entire house smelled like that familiar mix of coffee and dust. I started for the guest bathroom and then got a better idea. The ranch had a lower level that was half underground. It had been finished into an office, but there was a couch down there. I could have Grace sleep on the couch, and we could sleep on the floor. "Where are you going?" My mom was standing behind me, eyebrow raised, as I undid the chain lock to the basement floor. "I think we're going to sleep down there." "No, you're not. It's so dusty down there. I haven't cleaned for ages. There could even be mice and we're sleeping down here." "Those alerts were probably just a prank," she continued, "or a glitch or something. Besides, you're like an hour away now." I'd only told my mom about the alerts. I didn't tell her about the thing in the woods. My mom was not a supernatural person. She definitely chalked it up to a trick of a light or something. Casper himself could be floating in front of her face, and she'd call it a trick of a light. "You're being ridiculous," she continued. "You know, this reminds me of that time you taped up the door to the attic. Remember? When the exterminator had found a bat up there. You were worried there were more with rabies and they could flatten themselves in through the cracks between the door and the ceiling and bite you while you were sleeping." "You don't feel the bites when you're sleeping," I growled back. "A lot of people have gotten rabies from bats in their houses, and they can squeeze through really tiny places." "My point is," she interrupted, "it's unsanitary down there." Grace was getting incredibly heavy in my arms. I glanced at Luke, who was just standing in the doorway wide-eyed, like he'd walked in on a gunfight. Then I pulled the chain lock and yanked the door open. "Kate," Mum said warningly. Halfway down the stairs, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I got Grace settled on the couch, then pulled it out. "Emergency alert. Your phone's GPS indicates you have stopped in Redacted, New Jersey. Disobeying an emergency alert is a federal offense. Please return home and stay above ground." I lifted my phone to show Luke, who was coming down behind me. His face looked ghastly pale in the white light. Mom was right behind him and craned her neck and read the alert too. "All that's BS," she said. "It's not a federal offense, it's a state offense. And that would be an evacuation order, like for a hurricane or something." She shook her head. "You know what this sounds like? One of those scammers. I got a call from someone claiming to be my grandson." "It's not a scam," Luke interrupted, without elaborating. Then he worked in silence, putting the blanket over Grace, getting her comfortable. I flicked on the light and checked for mouse droppings, but I didn't see any. "I'll get the rest of our stuff," he said, leaving my mom and I alone. Her expression softened as she looked down at Grace, at her perfectly cherubic little face. "Do you need anything else?" "No, I don't think so." She nodded and went back upstairs. I glanced around. The office stuff was in the leftmost corner, the desk covered with papers, and a single photo of my dad. He'd been gone 7 years now, and it seemed like every year more and more of his stuff got tucked away, moved downstairs, shoved into storage. I swallowed down the feeling and glanced around the rest of the room. The door next to the desk led to the unfinished storage area. On the other end of the basement was a sliding glass door that led out into the backyard. I didn't like that at all. We were technically underground where we stood, but the rightmost corner with the door was above ground. Did that mean we were still vulnerable? Those things couldn't fit through a glass door, I thought, but they couldn't fit through a normal door either, and apparently we wouldn't have been safe in our own home. I stared out the glass door, afraid I might see one of them out there. Maybe this was a bad idea, to stay here. We were an hour away, sure, but the pines were still right at our door. Not officially the Pine Barrens, but the surrounding Pinelands ecosystem, which was almost the same thing. If those things came from the Barrens, they were only in the burnt areas, I reminded myself. I imagined a pine cone spiraling in midair, petals opening as fire raged around it, and skeletons made of sticks prying their way out of the thing, creeping along the ground, stretching and growing towards the sky. Were there any maps of the burned areas? I pulled up Google Maps, looking for the blackened areas, but the information would be out of date, wouldn't it? My phone buzzed. I expected another alert, but it was a text from Lacey instead. My friend Rochelle got the same alert you did, by the way, it read. Super weird. My heart dropped. Did Rochelle, whoever she was, listen to it? Tell her not to listen to the alert. I started typing. It's a trap. Then I realized how unhinged it sounded. I didn't even know Lacey that well. I thought for a second, then typed a new message. Can you give me her number? I want to ask her about it. Pretty weird that it targeted both of us, no one else. Sure, let me ask her, was the reply. As I waited, Luke came back down the stairs, carrying our stuff, computer cords and stuffies nearly falling out of his arms. Someone else got the alert, I whispered. One of Lacey's friends. Really? Yeah, I asked for a number. A minute later, the number came in. I dialed it immediately. On the third ring, she picked up.
Hello? Hi, this is, Kate, Lacey's friend.
I started awkwardly.
We got the emergency alert too, but we think it's a trap. There's something off about it.
A pause.
But it came from the government,
she replied.
How could it be a trap? It seems like no one else is getting it. When alerts are sent out like that, they're sent to all the phones in a certain location. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, I don't know, it's weird.
Another pause.
Well, we were just going to go to bed here, so I'd better go. Wait, I think the basement is safe and everywhere else isn't,
I said quickly.
I think someone's trying to lure people into staying above ground. Okay, maybe,
she said unconvincingly.
Look, I gotta go, sorry.
A few seconds later, the call ended. Well, shit. She didn't believe me, I said, looking up at Luke, my lip trembling. She and her kids and her family, they're all going to... You tried, he said, wrapping his arms around me. That's the best you can do. I couldn't help it. I cried as we lay a blanket on the floor, got ready to sleep next to Grace. I looked down at her perfect little face, and then Luke and I snuggled under the blankets together. Hey, kiddo. I woke up with a start. For a second, I thought I was in my own bed, but then the roughness of the carpet, the aching in my back, brought me back to reality. My father's voice, rough and warm, lingered from the dream. I could almost feel his arms around me, the summer sunlight beating down on us as we played at the creek behind the house. I rolled over to check on Grace. Her eyes were wide open. She was staring behind me at the sliding glass door. Slowly, she raised a hand and pointed over my shoulder. I turned around. There was something twisting and turning, contorting itself, trying to get in through the sliding glass door like a dog through a cat door. It did it silently, except for a low clicking sound, like the popping of joints. All the blood drained from my face. Dark, sinewy legs like spider legs twisting and turning in the moonlight, squeezing itself ever so slowly through the hole it made. I now saw the shattered glass scattering the floor. I grabbed Luke and shook him. "Luke!" The thing fell still. I couldn't see eyes or a face, but I felt it in my gut. It was staring at me. Dizziness swept over me. I stumbled forward, losing my balance. It was like I was standing on the deck of a boat. The ground seemed to shift and tilt underneath me. I just wanted to lie down until the world stopped turning. "No!" I screamed internally. "You can't let that thing get Grace." I glanced around the room, looking for something that could be used as a weapon. Anything. "Go in there," I said to Grace, pointing to the storage room, or at least I thought I was. Everything was tilting and moving around me. "Go! Hide!" I stumbled forward, but all the colors were bleeding together now. Everything was hazy as a dream. My father was standing in front of me, standing there in the basement, but his face was all wrong. His eye drooped out of his socket like something had squeezed his skull. His grin was crooked. "Hey, kiddo," he said, in a voice that sounded off-key. Nausea filled me. I started vomiting, a warm liquid down my shirt, splashing on my feet. My dad, not Dad, stood tilted, like gravity had suddenly changed. One arm was too long and hung limply from its socket. "I miss you so much." "Stop," I sobbed. "Please stop." "Come with me. We can be a family again." "Stop. I never got to meet Grace. Wouldn't it be so wonderful for me to finally meet her?" The world tilted and shifted. I stared at my father, his left eye drooping like jelly, his crooked smile, his gaunt face, his limp arms. I opened my mouth. Hot pain shot up my shoulder. I fell to my knees instantly. I tried to cry out, to say stop again, to tell Grace to run for her life, but all that came out was a scream of pain, and another, and another. When I finally opened my eyes, the world had stopped tilting. Luke was dragging me across the floor, back from the glass door. Grace was peeking out of a storage area, terrified. I touched my shoulder, stinging with pain. My fingers came away red. It bit me. I'm dying. What? My phone began to ring, shaking all over. I reached into my pocket and pulled it out. It recognized the number. It was Rochelle.
"You're right,"
she said breathlessly. No preamble.
"What?"
I asked, my voice hoarse.
"About the alert. My husband, he has some friends who work with cell phones and stuff, and
She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice.
They trace a signal. It's not coming from the government or the town hall or whatever.
I chewed my lip, held my breath.
It's coming from the middle of the woods.